for now we have a book review. The name is super long. Professor Montague Enoch Reginald Foxwell Breckenridge III. I've never met or heard of the guy. He's quite the intellectual. So over to you, Professor.
Well, thank you very much. It is indeed my great privilege and pleasure to be able to share with you at the University of Melbourne National Training Event here in St Jude's Carlton. I bring greetings, of course, from the University of Antarctica, where I am the esteemed professor of hermeneutical and interpretive studies. And it's not a very big university, but I assure you it is an esteemed institution. I was speaking with your campus director, and he reported to me that at a recent planning event with the student leadership team that the syllabus, shall we say, for 2021 has been decided, and there will be several books of the Bible that will be studied, including the book of Colossians. And I thought that I would I'm here to review some books, in case you'd forgotten. That's what ostensibly I'm here for this evening, to review some books. I well remember in my youth, I was a very shy boy. I could never touch raw meat. As a child, I used to weep in butcher's shops. But anyway, that's beside the point. I well remember in my youth sitting here before the great fire of 1899 and hearing Professor Don Carson expound the letter of Philippians, Paul's epistle to the church in Philippi, otherwise known as Philippians. And those addresses have since been printed in a very short book that's also very cheaply available called Basics for Believers. If you're looking for a virtual, that means not in person, it's a term that the young people are prone to use, a virtual conversation partner, you might consider getting hold of this book called Basics for Believers. It will help you as you engage with Philippians, help others to do the same. Speaking of epistles of the Apostle Paul, I believe you will also be finding your way through the book of Colossians, and I believe you've been being addressed by Richard Chin, who is, of course, the National Director of the Australian Fellowship of Evangelical Students, and he has written a book expounding and applying the book of Colossians. Again, a mercifully short book, not because he's not a clear communicator, but because a short book is a good book. I'm getting the wind up, but I'm going to keep going because I also understand that you'll be delving into the Bible songbook, the book of Psalms. And it is very good to have a steady diet of Bible reading each day. What better way to do that than to make your way through all of the Psalms? And you might like to use Timothy Keller's book, which has a portion of each of the Psalms. And if you do a little bit each day, I think in a year, you'll get through all of the Psalms. You'll have some very helpful reflections and a prayer to pray or some ideas to pray at the end. It only takes about 6 or 7 minutes, even in Antarctica. I highly recommend my rock and my refuge. Richard Chin's book is called Captivated by Christ. Remember, he asked the question, has your heart been captured by Christ? I'm going to skip that book because we are running out of time. Many people say that I live in the past, but on this occasion, I live in the future because I recently took receipt of a book that hasn't even been released yet. Yes, this book by Stephen McAlpine, a native of Western Australia, a place that you all know well, has written a book called Being the Bad Guys. Listen to what he says. This is where Christians are at now. He says, yes, we're the bad guys now, and that's okay. That we are experiencing a backlash after a remarkable period of religious peace and tolerance for the church in the West. puts us back in the shoes of many Christians throughout history, and indeed of many in the current era around the world. The answers to how to live as bad guys are there, simply because the problem of finding ourselves redirected by the world has always been there. It's a very helpful book. I do believe that I have heard the extremely reverend rocking Rob Miller say that Christians need to get used to being weird again, get used to being strange again. It's a very similar kind of thesis. I recommend it to you. It's very practical. It's a book that will help you engage, make the connection between God's world and the world around you, God's word, that is. Another book that will help you do this, and this is the final book. I understand that you made your way with the help of one of my older colleagues, not old in age, but in association, Professor Helen Bell, through the book of Genesis. This book called Thinking Through Creation by Christopher Watkin, a philosopher and a lecturer in French existentialism, and yet also a devout Christian at Monash University, has written this excellent book that helps you to see how Genesis 1 and 2, those foundational chapters of the Bible, were actually written as a cultural critique all that way, and they still are, as we think about who God is in all his gravity and glory, and as we think about the purpose of creation. So I leave these books for you now. All these titles will be put onto the website. I'm sure that either Lucy or Lachlan, both of whose initials are LP, much like the long playing record that I enjoy playing. I'm going to hand back now to whoever is doing something next. Thank you for listening.